Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring a much requested ship, the Tier 10 German destroyer, the Elbing. The matchmaking is pretty standard. It's Tier 10, 5 battleships, 3 cruisers, 4 DDs. Basically pretty standard, although we are fortunate in the sense that there is no carrier in this game. Don't be fooled by the Elbing having defensive AA. The AA is actually complete junk and offers no real protection against CVs whatsoever. And also your air conceal is so poor that, well, honestly, CVs miss you up in multiple ways. Well, you can already see some issues here. Both the Marceau is pinging me to go to D, and I'm pinging the Marceau to go to D. And here is one of really the core issues of the Elbing. Despite taking up a DD slot, you cannot fulfill any basic DD roles in this ship. You simply cannot push into the cap like the Marceau is very much hoping I would, and, well, the reasons for this are multiple. First of all, the ship is stupidly slow. Even with the speed flag, this thing only does 38 knots, but in reality, especially if you're turning or maneuvering anyway, the real effective speed is much lower. In fact, you can see me making a full turn here, and the speed drops to below 32 knots. In fact, it drops even lower than that. So, it's clumsy, it's huge in size, it's actually even bigger than the Haragumo. It's a gigantic ship. It's got a lot of health, 30.9k, of course I'm running the HP perk, but in terms of size and maneuverability, it is complete trash. In fact, the maneuverability, the turning circle on this ship is 890 meters. To put that into perspective, the Yamato, the Tier 10 IGN battleship, has a 900 meter turning circle. This thing has a 890 meter, and it doesn't have a particularly good rudder shift either. It's, I think, the second poorest of the DDs after, like, Khabarovsk or something. So in terms of maneuverability, speed and size, the Elbing is complete trash. The other issue is what you can see here. In terms of damage output against destroyers, well, you don't really have any. There are situations where you get full pens when they angle just right, but most of the time you struggle to really effectively fight other DDs. So, when it comes to pushing into caps, well, you really don't want to do it. And another issue is that, well, you have defensive AA, which is, considering your AA values, is a completely wasted consumable. It's complete garbage. I mean, defensive AA to begin with is already poor, but on the Elbing, it really doesn't help alleviate its greatest weakness, and that is the fact that, well, you can't really smoke up if there's enemy DDs around, like there is here. There's multiple ones. There's Kalaber, there's a Grossovoy, there's a Shimakaze. If I try to smoke up in my small German smoke and I try to shoot, which means giving a fair bit of broadside, of course also letting the enemy know where I am, I will be torped instantly. And that's really, in fact, when I've been fighting Elbings, whenever they smoke up, I blind fire them, because the ship is as big as a cruiser, it's very easy to blind fire. Or if I'm playing a DD, I just torpedo it, because, well, the ship maneuvers so very poorly, and it's so large, and it has access to no hydro whatsoever. So, smoking up when there's DDs around is simply not an option. So, basic DD roles, this thing simply cannot do. It gets outspotted, outgunned, outtorped, out everything. The gimmick on the ship is the guns though. That's really the main thing. It has 150mm guns. You have improved German HE pen, which is 38mm, but don't go around shooting HE in this thing, because honestly, the HE DPM is, I think it still might be the lowest of all Tier 10 destroyers. Like, the HE DPM is just complete trash on the ship. Don't even bother. And this is full gunboat build that I'm running. I'm running the increased range, I'm running the BFT, I'm running basically as much gunpowder as you can, and even then the HE DPM is just complete junk, and it's not something you should rely on in any situation whatsoever. I'm not running Fearless Brawler, even though it would have been quite useful this game, but that's because most of the time you actually don't want to be doing too much open water gunboating that I'm doing here, because, well, look at this turning circle, look at this size. This ship isn't hard to hit. And if the enemy has the fast shell velocity cruisers like Venezias or Nevskis or Moskvas or Stalingrads or whatever, you are very easy to hit. Marceau has gotten really frustrated now. He wants me to push in, so he starts shooting me and being really butthurt. But obviously, I can't go in. What am I going to do against triple DDs and something like a Stalingrad? In fact, I suspect there's a DD here. I'm gonna try to push up and maybe get vision of this enemy destroyer. Look at this speed. I'm doing 31.6, slowly accelerating, going as fast as I can, going in a straight line. I get spotted. I know there's a DD in front of me. I turn into the DD. I'm really trying to catch this DD off guard. You can do this in Kleber, you can do this in Marceau, and you're so fast that you catch up to the enemy DD and you can catch him and you can kill him, especially if he's nose in. But with the Elbing, well, the DD has clearly turned around and he's already running away because your concealment is so poor and your speed is so poor that it's ridiculously easy to outmaneuver this thing. I know there's torpedoes coming at this point and the enemy team all starts opening up on me because I'm being outspotted, so I just turn away and there are the torpedoes as predicted and there's all the incoming shells. You are so easy to deal with in another destroyer because all you need to do is outspot this thing and that's pretty much it. And I lose a good chunk of health disengaging. So the basic DD role that you're supposed to fulfill in the ship is, well, it doesn't really exist. So when you end up in a situation like this where you got two gunboats on the flank, I actually get spotted here briefly, and I make a prediction that there's a Shimakaze, and that's probably going to push towards the cap, or he's going to sit there trying to torpedo Colombo. Either one, those are the two things I would potentially do. So I drop some torpedoes. Keep in mind that these torpedoes are laughably slow. The torpedoes actually do 50 knots. No, I didn't misspeak, 50 knots. The French destroyers with speed boost are actually significantly faster than your torpedoes are. They hit quite hard, 16.5, they got decent torpedo detectability, but especially trying to torp someone kiting away or a hydro ship or whatever is basically impossible because they are so very poor. So torpedoes is junk, AA is junk. The armor, you do have 25mm plating, which is quite nice. Against enemy DDs, obviously it doesn't really help against anything else, and against the likes of Petro and Riga and such, it's actually a downside because it arms their AP, and that means you get full pen from those cruisers, which isn't fun at all. Minotaur smokes up as I try to take some pot shots on him. And once again, we're being zoned out, forced to disengage, and this is where I get really lucky. Those predictive torps on the Shimakaze, I actually managed to nail him with a torpedo. That was just a stroke of really good luck. My prediction managed to get perfectly on the broadside of that Shima, and he wasn't able to dodge it, and he ate the full torpedo. So this gives us some lifeline. But in this point, there's still a smoked up Minotaur. I don't know where the Grozoboy is, and I don't even know where the Thunder is, so all we can really do is sit back and farm. And, well, this is basically the gimmick of the ship, though. This is what you give up all these other things for. This is these AP guns. You got actually better dispersion than all the other DDs. You got tighter, is it 50% tighter dispersion on your guns. So your guns are actually really accurate. As long as your aim is good, and you aim for the upper belt like I'm doing here, you can get some really meaty chunks in. Or alternatively, if you do get cruisers giving you broadside, you can also get meaty chunks in on these ships. The pen is good. I mean, it's roughly Hindenburg AP pen. I mean, obviously Hindenburg AP pen isn't exactly going to break the bank in terms of incredible, but for a destroyer, it's very good. It's the best AP pen of any destroyer in the game. It's best at punishing, of course, light cruisers that you can citadel across the map, but sadly, there's honestly not a whole lot of light cruisers in the game. I mean, that's really one of the main issues. The ship that this thing is supposed to counter, the light cruisers, well, kind of everyone counters light cruisers. Everyone just smashes light cruisers. So being able to counter light cruisers isn't really that useful of a gimmick to have. I managed to get some really good volleys over the islands, catch a couple of citadels on this guy and really chunk him out, and we're finally starting to get some damage and some utility on the board. As soon as the Shima died and the Grozoboy was spotted in the other cap, I'm finally able to do something. I'm able to play aggressive. But here we have another issue yet again, and that's the fact that, well, you can't really open with a gunboat because you're such a big, clumsy ship. So you rely very heavily on your smoke to deal damage. But on a flank like this, where my Colombo is miles behind me, my Kremlin is behind an island, the only one doing any spotting on this flank is actually me. No one else is doing any spotting. So I can't smoke up, because if I smoke up, then we completely lose vision of them. So it's rough. It really is rough. Obviously, we need to get some damage in though. I can't just sit here and spectate, and the Yamato is not shooting me, and he's giving me a nice flat broadside. So you see I pinpoint the upper belt. You obviously don't want to hit the citadel, your shells will shatter, so I'm going for those upper belts where I'm getting those juicy pens. Keep in mind that I mentioned that these guns actually have really good pen, but they also have improved penetration angles. So Well, the HE DPM is shit, and honestly the AP DPM on paper isn't that good. The effective AP DPM is actually quite a bit better simply because of these improved pen angles and just a really good dispersion, which means that generally speaking when you're fighting cruisers or farming battleships, your AP tends to be quite consistent in performance. I'm not going to say very consistent because, well, obviously you do end up getting bounces at the angle like that, but I would say compared to other DDs, very, very consistent in performance. I juked the first Thunder volley by stopping, hoping to delay using my smoke because I'm trying to pick up this Yamato kill. I tried to accelerate juke out of the second volley, but he's so close and he ends up landing first 5.4k, and then I realized, well, I have to smoke up, this is terrible, and he lands another 5.4k. So we just lost 11,000 health because, once again, this is a very big, very clumsy ship that is very easy to shoot, so we're forced to smoke up at this point. And note that this is running the propulsion mod, so this is the minus 50% time taken to accelerate. So if you're not running the prop mod, well, the acceleration is significantly worse than what you're seeing here. I dropped some torpedoes on him. That's the narrow spread. You probably wouldn't believe it, but yeah, that's what the narrow spread looks like. And sadly there are some huge, gigantic gaps for this Thunder to use to just weave past, and since he's not shooting, I don't have vision of him, so I try to reverse out. I actually get vision of the Yamato, so I switch to him instead, really trying to pick up this kill, because at this point we need some kills. We need to get some secured kills, but he goes dark, and as I'm forced to push into the smoke, because I'm afraid of what this Thunder is going to do. At this point he's really so close that I can't stick around. My concealment is 7.2k with this build, so we just start farming, kiting away, disengaging. There's not a whole lot of options left for us. I switched to HE. At this point we're trying to burn / flood him to death. The HE has a 9% fire chance, which for 6 guns with, well, with this build you have 5.9 second reload with AR adding in, isn't, once again, that impressive, especially since it appears I think he's running fire prevention as well. He makes a slight turn again, and these 50-knot torpedoes, well, they sail wide past him. You kind of have to go in a straight line in a really long time to eat the Elbing torpedoes because, well, as I mentioned, 50 knots, not exactly impressive. He goes for some blind fire in the smoke. I think the fire ran out. We tried to get some last volleys in while we can still use the smoke, keeping me hidden between us. We do get a second fire on him. I'm ready to maybe shoot him. But it looks like he's actually letting the fire burn. He's running fire prevention. He's not worried about a single fire. And this actually opens up an opportunity for me, because if he goes low enough, I might be able to kill him with AP, provided I get access to his broadside. So at this point we go for the torpedo concept. The idea here is I torp in front of him. If he goes straight, he'll eat, maybe, hopefully eat torpedoes. I mean, we haven't been very lucky with the torpedo hit so far. If he gives broadside, then we can maybe punish him with the AP. Because as I mentioned, the AP is quite consistent, and at this point we're down 860 to 400 points, so I don't have a lot of options. He goes for the turn, so I instantly switch to AP and I open up, aiming for that upper belt, trying to get those juicy pens. You don't want to hit the superstructure, you'll get overpens. You don't want to hit the belt because you'll get shatters. I stop juke, basically full break, and I managed to juke his full volley, and this means I will be able to kill him before he gets his second volley off. Getting some juicy 5k volleys on him, and before he can get another volley off, I pick up the kill. And here's another issue. You are you're kind of a cruiser, really, that needs to shoot broadsides because your HE DPM is so poor. You need to get access to broadsides, but you're actually so stupidly slow that I just sped up this replay because no one wants to watch this ship trying to sail to the decap at normal speed. It just takes an absolute lifetime. I managed to see the Yamato pushing up, so once again, we open up. Very consistent damage against battleships, well, provided I start hitting his superstructure or upper belt and not his turrets. But just a very, very consistent damage farmer. So I don't actually think that the Elbing as a ship is poor. Because the guns are very, very consistent. Guns have a lot of consistency to them, and I'm a sucker for consistent guns. The problem is not that the Elbing guns are poor, that the Elbing is a poor ship. It's just that it's an absolutely terrible destroyer. It is possibly the worst destroyer in the game, because even something like a Kaba can punish DDs. Like if your teammate spots a DD in a Kaba, you can punish that DD really hard. You can absolutely melt him. But in the Elbing, well, most of the time you don't actually do that much to DDs. volleys. There are exceptions, of course. We've all seen the big volleys when a DD just happens to give you that perfect angle where he won't get overpenned and he won't bounce, but you get full penetrations. Yeah, you get really good damage then, but there's no consistency in that. There's absolutely no consistency in that. More than often, you're going to see a couple of overpens, or you're just going to see bounces as they start sailing away. The DD punishing power of the Elbing just doesn't exist. It sucks at it. Trying to rush into the cap, still a chance to win. I always try to win as hard as I can. That's kind of my thing. I just like tryharding. That's the kind of player I am. I go for some shots on the Yamato. I try to get into the cap, zoning out the Stalingrad so he doesn't get shots on me, while at the same time trying to get the cap and trying to get shots on the Yamato. I manage to pick up the Yamato kill. I get radared, of course, by the Stalingrad. I'm hoping that his railguns can't shoot over this island, but I'm actually proven wrong. He has managed to get close enough, and they barely clipped the island, and he managed to catch me for 4,000 health. At this point, I'm down to 8k. Obviously, I can't push up on him. He's probably switched to HE at this point. Or even then, with AP, with this much health, he might easily kill me. So speeding up the replay a bit again, because, well, I'm just going to sit here. I'm reversing to see if he tries to maybe sneak past. I can maybe shoot him and then duck behind the island before he can shoot back. That's really our goal. I'm hoping he would push into the cap and contest me. That would be the best thing, because then I can maybe YOLO Torp or just YOLO Citadel him. But it turns out he's actually disengaging. We get the cap, which gives us 2 minutes of playing time, 2 minutes of getting something done. I very carefully come around the corner, because if he's sitting here, I'm going to be forced to smoke up. You don't start acceleration juking or anything like that in this thing. It's just too clumsy. He's not here, so he has to be somewhere on the right. It looks like he might be behind this island. I get spotted, and that's the worst thing ever, because that means the Grozovo is here. I turn. So I put the island between me and the Stalingrad. I take a shot at the Grozovoy, and at the same time I instantly start smoking up because my guns need to turn. This is running I think I'm running the turret traverse mod even, and I'm not sure if I'm running expert marksman as well. I'm running both of them, and even then the turret traverse is 15.6. I turn my guns though, and this is where I managed to catch the Grozovoy with a really good volley. He's just angled right that I get 6 full pens and we do 8,000 damage. As you probably can tell, that is that kind of special occasion when everything goes right. I know he's torping, so I duck behind the island to make sure I don't eat any of them, because, well, the ship is huge. At this point, we got 1 minute remaining. I can't push around the corner, because, well, both the Grozovoy and the Stalingrad is there, and I'm the only one here capable of killing them. Even worse, the Stalingrad radars, and he's guaranteed got HE loaded, and looking at the way he's angled away from the 2 other ships, he's obviously aiming at me. Pushing out means guaranteed death. Instead, I try to reverse, hoping I can maybe catch this Grozovoy. Maybe I can pick him up. But the Grozovoy is staying at line with the Stalingrad and stays in the cover, sadly. So I just need my 2 BBs to be able to pick up this Stalingrad. That's really our only hope at getting anything done. But so far they haven't done it, so I'm forced to stay behind the island so I don't insta-die. Grozovoy pops up, 5.4k. For most DDs, this would be an easy kill. But this time he's giving me flat broadside, which means I get 4 overpens, followed by another 5 overpens, and the damage output is complete garbage. And that's really my point exactly. Most of the time, inconsistency is the name of the Elbing when it comes to fighting other DDs. And because I'm not able to pick up that kill, this game actually, despite my utmost attempts to turn this game into a win, this game ends up being a defeat. 220,000 damage, 1 torpedo hit, and that was the blind torpedo hit on the Shima. That literally, until I landed that torpedo on the Shima, I wasn't able to do anything this game, because with his concealment, he just completely zoned me out. Only when the DD is gone are you able to do something, and that's really kind of the Elbing story. If the DD doesn't like push into you for some reason and take a gunfight that you can kill him in, or just potato, if it just uses his vision against you, it's very, very hard to do anything in the ship. Luckily, I managed to get a really, I would say, lucky more than anything, a predictive torpedo, because the torps are so slow, and that opened up the opportunity to do something this game. But even then, it was very much an uphill battle. 6 citadels, all of them on the Minotaur. We did get a cap in the end, the cap that we've been fighting for the entire match. Confederate, 3 kills, 2 fires. Team score-wise, well, we do break 2,000 base XP on the losing team. In fact, I almost topped the scoreboard for both teams this game. I came quite close. The Marsoda was pinging me and quite mad. Well, he didn't do quite as well. Overall though, this was a game that I felt that if I had been playing another destroyer, I would have been able to do so much more. I would say the first maybe 8 minutes of this match, I basically accomplished nothing. And that was despite being very familiar with the ship, being very comfortable with how it plays, and doing my utmost to actually impact the outcome of the game. I simply wasn't able to do anything. And for that reason, I think this ship is just an absolute shit destroyer. But because of the damage output and the consistency, it's still a decent ship. But if you end up being unlucky and you get a team with an Elbing and a Kaba, and the enemy team gets something like, well, just a Gearing Shima even, you're going to be in so much trouble because the enemy DDs, if they don't suicide, they're just going to take all cap and vision control, and they're going to control the game from the start. So, detailed report-wise, well, land that torp on the Shima did 13,000, which was good. We did a lot of damage to the Yamato, 94k, on the Thunder, 55k. That is that consistency. And there's few shots we took on the Minotaur, 35,000 damage as well. I mean, the accuracy speaks for itself. We played a fair bit at range, quite at long range, and we shot 424 AP shells, landed 274. On the other hand, we shot 40 HE shells, landed 35. That's very, very good accuracy, and that's really what the ship does well. Still, I kind of despair when I see this ship on my team, because even in the hands of a good player, it's so very limited. It's not good. It's not a very particularly good cruiser because it doesn't have any utility and it doesn't have any HE damage output, and it's not a particularly good destroyer either because it can't fulfill, well, it's shit destroyer because it can't fulfill any DD roles. It's a decent supportive destroyer though. That's kind of basically, if you have a Shima or something spotting for you and you play around, you support it like you do in a Kaba, then it can play okay, but very much a situational ship. Anyway, let me show you guys my recommended build for the Elbing. Alright, as usual, let me start with the equipment. Turret survival, torpedo survival, engine survival as well. You can't run speed boost or you can't run hydro or anything. I mean, technically you could run the defensive AA modification, but it's such a bad consumable, and your AA is so sad. I mean, medium range 102 continuous, long range 53 continuous. You have access to a total of 2 flak puffs. I mean, it's an absolute joke. I don't even know why they added this thing. The thing is, if the Elbing had a hydro, it doesn't need to be the German 5-6 km hydro. It doesn't need to be a great hydro. If it even was just a basic hydro with like 3 to 4 km range, so that you could so that you had some sort of early warning system against enemy torpedoes, then you could play the ship much more aggressively, because you could actually push up into caps and you could smoke up and you could pop your hydro, provided they don't have a radar ship, and you wouldn't absolutely get torped to shit, but you'd have a tool to allow you to play in that smoke. But because you don't have access to any hydro and you can't switch this around, you just get zoned out. That's the way it goes. I run the turret reverse because the turret reverse is quite slow, and also you don't really need the better dispersion. I think the dispersion is good enough, and the percentage bonus you get from here is simply too slow. Torpedo tubes, not worth it either. Like it's a percentage based buff, which means that if you would slot this, well, you get 5%, not 5 knots but 5%, and your base torpedo speed is so poor that it's simply not worth it. Propulsion mod, to be able to accelerate juke, because you're sure as hell not going to be able to turn juke with an 890 meter turning circle. Concealment, because, well, the rest are terrible. Steering gears isn't nearly enough to make up for anything. And faster reload on the guns, because with AFT you have a pretty comfortable 16 km range, which I think is more than enough to utilize. Captain build wise, if you have the Gunther Lutyens, he's obviously the superior one. He's just really good. I would say, well, in terms of build, you start preventive maintenance, you build into last stand and survivability expert, standard destroyer. You don't build concealment expert because this is full gunboat. Like, you can't get competitive concealment anyway, so it's not worth spending 4 points on a skill that ultimately won't change your playstyle in any way. So instead you build main veteran AA expert to get that extra range on your main guns. After that, well, there are some options, but after this we just build damage. We get survivability, utility, and then you just build damage. AR is a pretty good first 3-pointer, so if you go 10 points, then 13 for AR, after which I'd probably go extra heavy AP, 7.5% AP damage, which basically translates to pure damage in terms of Elbing, because that's almost all you shoot. So 13 points, 15 points, and then at 18 points you build into BFT for 5% faster reload. After that, actually at some point during here you probably want to mix in incoming fire alert, because having some sort of warning and that someone's shooting you is good. Personally, I think you should always run either priority target or incoming fire alert. One or the other. Never both, never neither. One or the other. If I had a 21-point captain, I'd be running priority instead of incoming fire alert. And you also probably want to mix in the turret traverse at some point, so you get 15.6. 15.6 sounds fast, but then you remember you're a destroyer, and oftentimes you get jumped from weird angles, or you can't basically in a normal slow turret traverse destroyer. If you get jumped from one side, you can turn your ship around and turn your guns around. But because this thing is so clumsy, it just doesn't turn. So you need your turrets to be quite snappy to make the gameplay more comfortable. Ultimately, flag-wise, detonation flag, sure, speed flag, I mean, you need all the speed you can get, and faster consumables. Everything else is kind of, honestly, you don't really need. The fire chance is, oh, I actually thought this thing had a good fire, sorry, I thought this thing had a 9% fire, it's actually 8%, I had 9% with flags, so even worse than I thought. The HE DPM is, of course, terrible. It's German HE, or HE Alpha, it's 1.7k, it's just terrible, terrible, terrible. I mean, in comparison with something like a Kaba has 1.9, but with a 4.4 seconds reload compared to your 5.9. Also, of course, he's got 2 extra guns, so like it's in a completely different world. Not comparable. I expect the Shimakaze to have better HE DPM than you do. That's just the way the Elbing works. At least it's pretty flag conservative, because you don't really benefit from a lot of these flags, so simply not worth it. I'm running the German camo here. I think the default one, the permanent, looks like this. Still, that was my Elbing commentary. A decent support ship for other. It's very much just a very selfish damage farmer. That's really the TLDR. The Elbing is a ship that you kind of chill with. It's kind of like the Schultz in that sense. It's a ship that you play to chill. You can't really contest caps, you can't really do a whole lot, but you can kind of chill and you can farm some damage. If you got a DD scouting, then you can smoke up and you can just chill in the smoke and you can farm from the smoke. I didn't want to include such a replay though, because I find it to be, it's pretty boring gameplay, and I felt like that game really just showed how screwed you can get if the enemy has half competent destroyer and you're stuck with gunboats, and well, an Elbing as well. Anyway, that was all for me. If you like my commentary, as always, feel free to drop me a sub. I do appreciate the support, as it's one of the reasons why I do what I do. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you for watching.